Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us again for another episode of Leading on Mondays. My name is Lungu, and I'm so delighted to be with you today. And today I'm joined by my friend and colleague at Maxwell Leadership, Madalina Ghinescu. Hi, Madalina.
Hello, Florin, and nice to be here with you.
Thank
How
you
are
for
you
joining
today?
us. Yeah, I'm
You're
doing good.
welcome.
I'm doing good. Yeah, it's been I had some time to rest during the weekend, so it's good. It's Monday morning, and I'm excited about our topic today. How are you?
Well, I'm good, and I'm also excited to discuss with you the topic that we have today related to conflict inside the team. And I prepared some questions for you and for anybody who is listening to us, who is a leader and who wants to understand better how to solve conflicts between members in the team. Are you ready, Florin?
Absolutely, as always. Shoot.
Okay, so the first question is what are the main causes of a friction and conflict inside the team? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think there are many causes. But if we would look at, a couple of them, like three, if I would be thinking about that, the first one would be diversity. And I know this is surprising because we say that diversity and inclusion are important, but diversity alone sometimes leads to resentment and conflict between team members because when we come with diverse backgrounds, diverse personalities, diverse opinions, and when we bring those different points of view to the table, if we're not able to communicate those in a way that is not offending other people, or is not maybe challenging other people, but is challenging the result that we're trying to create and is challenging what we're trying to build there. When we're not able to separate that process from the person, then it might lead to conflict because um, if my point of view is different, I might be perceived as I'm not agreeing with you. So when we bring our point of view to the table and we bring different perspectives, sometimes just because we think differently, we might be perceived of being on different sides of the table, and that creates conflict.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I was thinking about what I read from Lencioni related to the five dysfunctions of a team. And I
Hmm.
remember he was stating that inside the team, when the team is first created, there is this diversity. Everybody's putting on the table their perspective, their ideas, their I don't know, maybe advice and things like that. So it's very very common for in this type of team development to have conflicts or to have friction inside that team. So it's just a matter of time until the leader can discuss with everybody and can set a direction for all the team members to align to one idea and to be well, to have everybody included. Even though they are different, they still, and it's a diverse team, they still need to put their hands together to go to the target that they have in mind. So I think it's a
Absolutely.
good idea that you started with this diversity inside the team, and it's just a matter of time until people will get aligned and go for the target. And I have
Yeah.
another question. I'm just reading from that. I don't want to miss any questions I have. Um, I was very curious from your perspective. What should be considered as a conflict and what should not be considered as a conflict between interaction of interactions between members?
Yeah, so that's also a really good question because yeah. So what I have in mind when I think about conflict is whenever as a leader I need to manage people and manage the interaction between people rather than us focusing on the goal, it means that something it's wrong there's some kind of conflict, right? So whenever I'm shifting my focus from um, the goal to not offending someone. Let me see how do I explain this to Madalina so I don't offend her. Let me see how do I explain to Madalina that she needs to work with Florin and I don't offend Florin. Or let me see how can I, now we're not able to take these new clients because I know Madalina and Florin, do not get along together. So that's when my focus as a leader shifts from the goal and us as a team, creating the results that we want, and me thinking about how do I manage this meeting, right? So instead of us focusing on the goal, we start to focus on how do we navigate this without stepping on people's toes, right? And this comes from the fact that some people are unaware that they might be offending others, and some other people might be too sensitive to any kind of comments and take those things personally. And this is again the diversity of personalities on the team, right? But whenever we shift focus from the goal and the results we want to create to managing the conversation and managing the relationship between people, that's when we leak energy, and that's is not just friction. This is conflict. And I think that there's another aspect that I want to touch on. There is whenever we're looking at, so instead of us challenging the result, so for example, we've done something in a certain way, we got a result, right? And now the team starts to challenge, okay, so how can we do that better, right? So instead of us focusing on that kind of friction that we need in the team to improve a result, we start then taking that personally. And instead of saying, okay, Florin, I think we can improve that result, we'll say, Florin, that idea of yours didn't really work. So let me share with you what we could do differently, right? So that becomes personal rather than being focused on how can we do this, right? And if someone is always challenging whatever other people are doing, then that person might be perceived, well, okay, so you're always challenging what we're doing. Like now, it's the time for you to show what you're doing. So that becomes the kind of interaction we don't want to have in the team. So whenever we cross that boundary from focusing on the results and we start focusing on managing the conversation and managing relationships, that starts leaking energy for us, as a team, and it becomes dangerous. It's not helping the team anymore.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I'm thinking about when you said about challenges. Somebody in the team might challenge everybody else. I think now challenge, the word challenge can have two meanings. First of all, challenge in a good way to improve, to create performance, to efficientize the process. Or on the other side, it can have a very negative meaning. When you say challenge, it means that regardless of what the other members are saying or trying to do, that one person is trying to set back everything else. It's not, they might not be, I don't know, they might not agree with everything. They say, no, 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 we cannot do that. That's too much. We should stay here. We should do that. That's not a good idea. Don't implement this. So in this situation, it can have a very negative impact on the team. It's regardless of what they are saying, this one person can set everybody else back.
Yeah.
The whole team, they can
Mhm.
set back the whole team. And I would like to for you maybe to discuss one example. Let's say I know that I discussed with you earlier about an example when one of the member of the team says to you that he doesn't like, and he wouldn't like to work with another colleague
Mhm.
because they have a very clear conflict and they still need to work together, let's say for example in the project to make all the work done. But how would you advise a leader who has, because I know that there are a lot of leaders, I also met leaders like that when they have conflicts between members. One member doesn't like to work with the other member. How do you advise leaders to deal with this situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's almost like you read my mind, because recently I had launched a survey on LinkedIn, and we had some input from the audience, because I shared three examples. So one is that you put those people face to face, right? You actually bring them both to a meeting, and you kind
Mhm.
of have them face the situation, and you explain as a leader, then this is not helping us, this is not helping the team, so we need to do something about you not being able to work together, because we need you to work together. Secondly, would be that when the leader sees this happening. So, for example, they have a team meeting, they have a project meeting, and the leader sees that there is something, and they see those kind of arrows and things going from one side to the other. You can see this, right? And
They
so
attack each other, yeah.
exactly. So they tease each other or they challenge each other, but not in a productive or healthy way. So then the leader could just right there on the spot actually manage that situation and make sure that this is not an acceptable behavior for them. Or the third option would be for the leader to speak with them separately, one by one separately, and share the situation. And what we got from the answers were split between these three options. But one that really stuck out for me was someone that put something in the comment, and she said, I would first make sure that I make this clear in front of the group. Like, for example, when I see this happens between the two members, I make sure that I acknowledge that this is not acceptable, and I kind of give clear expectations to everyone. Because if you do that in front of a group, that what happens is that the group will also see how you as a leader manage this, and what is your approach, and what is tolerable and what is not, what is acceptable, what is not. And even if you speak with the person in private, the group would not know, right? So
Exactly,
they will not
yes.
know what is your attitude towards this kind of interaction. But what a person said, which I love, that is because, so first of all, you do this in front of the group, and then you speak with each of them individually and explain to them what you just done, and what this means for them. So I would say when we have situations like that, so first of all, if we see this happening, then we definitely want to acknowledge that that's not productive, and the goal that for which we are there is just for us to bring the results that we need to bring as a team, and this is not helping the result. And then have a conversation one-on-one with each individual and letting them know that this is not acceptable, and if they continue to do that, right, and this hurts the team, they will probably miss opportunities for growth, because they will not be able to be on this project or on the other project. Like, if Madalina is on that project and I don't like to work with Madalina, then I just exclude myself from that project, right? And the other way
Mm-hmm.
around, it's also true. So
Mm-hmm.
if I work on a project and you would like to work with me, no, sorry, you would like to work on the project, but you would not like to work with me, then you give the manager the choice. Like, should I choose between Florin and Madalina? No, I don't want to choose between. I want both of them to work on this project, right? So when you explain that way, I think it makes more sense, and it's very clear for the person, for each individual. How is this affecting them, and then potential opportunities for growth, right, and promotion. Does it make sense?
It makes sense. And it was a good example, like as you said, if I know somebody else that will work on the same project, if I would join that team and I don't like the person, then I would think and reconsider me joining the project. But I know some people in leadership sessions that I have. They are actually said, I will join the project even though I don't like to work with that person, because from their point of view, it's more important to be on the project than to avoid the conflict and not to be in the project anymore, because it's, let's say, it's useful for their career development to be in that project. But
Yeah.
that would be a very special case when they join the project, even though they know it, they don't like the other person they are working with, and it will create that friction that you mentioned earlier. And it's a very good point what you stated, with the people, with the leader, to state in front of everybody, this is the rule. And also, this is, I also knew this example, and I think it's very useful, because you don't know what's behind the closed doors,
Yeah.
what's happening behind closed doors. So maybe you, as a leader, you're very good at managing the conflict between people, but if the other people in your team don't see that, what you're doing, how you're dealing with this conflict, they would say, "Oh, yeah, my leader is not efficient. He closed his eyes when the two members, attacked each other," and that might also create the opportunity for other people to do the same
Yeah, and
if the
this is
leader doesn't take action and doesn't set a ground of rules.
absolutely. So this is one of the other causes for conflict and friction is passive leadership, right? So when you as
Oh,
a leader,
yes.
when you're not setting the stage, when you're not giving your team clear instructions. For example, one of the challenges I see in many very fast-paced organization is that they believe we don't have the time to set in structures and processes, which means that we kind of build our wings on the way down, right? Which is great because that allows them to be nimble and to be able to navigate fast. But then what happens is that it includes a lot of uncertainty, which means and things that are not clear between team members, like who does this, how do we do this, what's the procedure here, what's the rule here, and not having those in place and not having a leader that sets those boundaries, then you allow kind of the team to self manage, and in that way, like some people might take a bigger role and kind of set their rules. And if those rules are not constructive, and if I want Madalina on my project team just because I like her, not because of her skills, right? uh,
Mhm.
right? Or I might go on Madalina's project just because I want that on my CV, but I'm not really sure that Madalina is the best project leader for that. So those things, if this happen in the team and the leader doesn't set the boundaries and the leader doesn't say, hey, this is how we do stuff, this is how we do things, what happens is that then you end up in these situations when some informal leaders kind of take the lead, and some people would probably be excluded and will not feel included in the team. And that's why as a leader we cannot just, this is what I say. As a leader, my first goal was to be dispensable, which means that I didn't want it to be my team to be dependent on me. But there were some things that I cannot delegate. So those were setting the salaries, having the one-on-one discussions, managing conflict. These are things that I cannot delegate. But as a leader, I'm all in for delegating as much as possible because it's empowering my team. But some things I cannot delegate. So these are the few critical things that I need to be responsible for. That's why I'm paid. Most other things, someone else can do them, but these are only the things that leaders can do. So absolutely, passive leadership, it's another cause for friction and conflict.
Is there anything else that can create conflict in between members? Do you have
Yeah, actually,
any
there
idea?
is one other thing that I witness a lot in bigger company, and that this also could be in smaller companies, but in bigger organizations, we usually have um, what we call to be conflicting commitments, conflicting goals. So, for example, in my automotive experience, we most of the time had the goal to create the best quality possible for the customer. So we were creating almost the customer experience, like how I work on the gearbox. So you as a customer, you press the pedal, and for us was to decide what's the best experience for you to go from 20 kilometers per hour to 50. And this led that in many decisions we had to take quality, right, over price. But there
Mm-hmm.
was another, I mean, when we decided which sensor to use, which part to use, which tool to use, we needed quality. And definitely as an engineer, I wanted the best quality. But there was a purchasing team, another department, and their goal was to buy the cheapest, products. I mean, their goal was to have the price per part, the price per sensor, the price per ECU, per tool, was to be the lowest possible. And many times suppliers would come, oh, we have this part which on paper has the same capability as this one, but it's just 20% cheaper. And we never believe that. I mean, how can you build something 20% cheaper with achieving the same quality? So for me as an engineer in our team, our goal is to deliver best quality. We needed the best parts. On the other department, their goal was to lower cost. They wanted to have the lowest cost possible. So these are conflicting goals, right? And
Mm,
definitely
mhm,
this brings friction, and
mhm.
because the two are just conflicting, and you need someone to mediate that. And we were starting to discuss about us and them, like us, the engineering team, and them, the purchasing team. And when you start
The bad
discussing
guys. The
exactly,
bad guys. Yeah.
when you were they don't understand engineering, they don't know why this part is not like this. And so that's definitely something that created conflicts. And if you have different parts of your team or of your organization working on different projects and they start competing. And another way was when we were going to this decision board and we had each of us our project, and I would go in, I would say I need these resources, and then my colleague would come in and they would need these resources, and another colleague will need these resources. And so then we kind of had conflicting commitments and conflicting goals, because I might need Madalina to work on my project, and my colleague will need Madalina to work on his project, and my colleague will need Madalina to work on her project. So then
Yeah.
how do we split Madalina in three? So when we have this kind of situation, it's almost impossible not to have them. Now, if you have a cross-functional team, you have experts in
Mhm.
different areas, and then you have project teams that pull those experts in different projects. It's impossible not to have this situation. So not having clear priorities from the leadership, which project
Yeah.
goes first and which goes second and which goes third, that's also creating conflict.
Okay, that's a very good point. Related to the conflict goals, I also had this experience in some of my projects I work with. But of course, it's very important for the leader to set the line. This is how we do stuff. This is priority one. This is priority two, and so on. But I'm curious now because you're talking about conflict. We can definitely say what are the bad, let's say, what are the disadvantages of having a conflict inside the team. But I'm very curious if there is any benefit of having a conflict inside the team.
Yeah, I think,
What do you think?
yeah, definitely. I mean, okay, conflict mean, okay, let me rephrase that. Yes. And first of all,
Okay.
conflict with, the benefit of conflict is that it will bring to the table some conversations that we would otherwise avoid. Like whenever you think about conflict, when you are in a conflictual situation with your teammates, with your leader, with a spouse, or with anyone else, what happens is that you really need to have some really uh, you know sensitive conversation. There are some topics that you avoided, and because it was not that bad, and they were kind of still doing their work, but even though they're kind of hurting the morale, you just avoided that conversation. So when you have conflict and you reach from friction to conflict, then it at least forces you as a leader to really face the situation. So I think what happens with conflict, it actually introduces us to the situation. It's a reality check. So the one thing
Mm-hmm.
that comes out of conflict is that something to reach the level of conflict means that you ignore it a few times before. So when you have conflict, it means that you were supposed to make some decisions and you didn't make them, and now it's time to face reality, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the first. We don't see that benefit when we are in the situation, but if we look back, right, that's actually the first thing. So it introduces us. It's a reality check. It introduces us to the reality of the situation. But before we get to conflict, there are other stages of conflict or friction. And this is what I call first is the challenging state, and second is the friction state. So when you think about challenging, if we use our diversities and our different backgrounds to challenge the way we do things, and we do that in the constructive way, and we talk about the process, not the person, and we're able to differentiate the being, the human being, from the behavior, and saying that was stupid, that didn't work, not you were stupid, you didn't work, right? So when you're able to separate those two things and you look at the process, then you're able to challenge the process and the friction. It's always a good thing when you're able to direct it, in a creative way. So for example, think about going into a meeting, a team meeting, and you're saying, you know guys or girls, I have an idea, and you share your idea, and then and you ask, what do you think? And it's silence. What does that mean? Is it that everyone agrees, or that none agree, and they're not, willing to speak up, or, you know right? It's worse than friction. Like you would like,
Exactly.
right? So when we see silence, that, we say that silence in teamwork, it deadly, is not golden. Golden is for you when you have stated your kind of idea or your point of view, and now you're silent, waiting for other people to share. But if they're silent, that's a big problem. So
Yeah.
although we might not want conflict and friction, we really actually need it in order to make any progress. Because otherwise, um, why do we need a team if it's always our idea is the best, right? So, so definitely there are good things coming out of having that friction and challenging, and even though, yeah, and also even if it gets to conflict, it's, as I said, the reality check. We need to really look at some things that we probably ignored for a while.
Okay, I would like to recap the main points that you said related to the topic today. Frictions and conflict usually can come from diversity of members in the team, also from passive leadership when the leader is not saying what they should say, in an example of conflict, and also related to conflicting goals. Yes, I think I said
Yeah.
conflicting goals when somebody has a goal and somebody else has another goal, and the goals are in conflict. And also when managers are trying to manage people feelings instead of going with the team to the goal or to the target, that's another problem. And of course, when there is a silence, when somebody comes with a new idea, if there is a silence in the room, that's one point that your team is not at all efficient, and it's a very test um, silent conflict. Like I can say, of course, everybody has an opinion, but if they are not safe to share in front of the others, that's a good reality check related to the performance of your team. Other than that, is there any tip and trick that you would
Yeah,
like to
I think
share
we're
with the leaders?
sure. I think we are at the top of the hour almost, or the half an hour we usually have. But there is an article I published on yesterday, actually, on LinkedIn, and I shared there, 5 ways to effectively manage conflict. And I think someone will share a link in the comments. But if we just recap those, right? I think we cover some of them, but like put them into the word, right? So first of all, this is something we need to have in mind as leaders. Leaders set the tone for the interaction between team members. What I mean by that is that how do you so when I join the team and I don't know anything about a team, I don't know anything about a company, and I just follow a person, which is my, someone that should, you know, um, show me how things are done here, right? And when I follow that person, I go around with that person through the organization, and the way that person interacts with everyone that they see and say, and the way they introduce me and say, "Hey, Florin, these are the bad guys here, right?" Or, "Hey, Florin, this is the other department. We don't really work well with them, right?" So they already, passed on to me an image of how should I see those people, right? and and as a leader, you set the stage for the interaction. So when I come in and I'm new to the team, I'm watching what the leader does. And if the leader speaks in a certain way with people, if the leader makes jokes, if the leader is always on time, I'm on time. If the leader is late, I might be late. The leader is late. That's probably the culture here. So first of all, we need to remind ourselves that leaders set the stage for the interaction. Secondly, um, we need to have, as leaders, these difficult conversations. We touch on this, right? So if we avoid those difficult conversations, and if we just ignore the elephant in the room, as we say it, then that will backfire and it will become a conflict, right? The third
Yeah.
thing is that when we are able to create that healthy work environment, you just mentioned that when we have an idea where we ask a question and everyone is silent, it means that they don't feel safe to share. So unless we're able to create that environment where people feel safe to share, then there always going to be some conflict, and we're not even aware of that. The the fourth thing that we as leaders could do is to encourage the type of behavior that we want to see in our team members, right? So if I see Madalina
Yes.
does something
Yes.
great, I on one side make sure that I acknowledge when someone does something that it's not acceptable, and I have that conversation, and I deal with that. But I also encourage Madalina or other team members for what they do well, because if I want Madalina to do more of that, I want to reward Madalina for that. So when someone sees that Madalina gets a compliment and Madalina gets acknowledged for doing something, right? Then say, oh, if I want to be acknowledged, then I need to do what Madalina did, right? So we reinforce more of the behavior we want to see, right? On one side, we say this is not applicable. This is not acceptable when we see something which is shouldn't happen. But on the other side, we also let know people that this is actually what we expect. And the last thing is something we already touch on, is praising people in public, but coach them in private, right? So when someone does something good, of course we want to celebrate with the team, but when they do something that is maybe not the way we expected, we don't want to criticize in front of a group. So these were like just some 5 steps, 5 things that if leaders do, they will definitely create an environment in their teams which will be not conflict free, because that's not the goal, but they will be able to manage and handle conflict in much better ways.
Thank you for the tips, Florin. And now you mentioned the topic that I would like to continue next week, is how we give and receive feedback inside the team, even though you are the leader or you are just a member in the team. So I'm looking forward for our next topic, and yeah, stay next to us, and you will hear some very powerful tips for leadership.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us today. I look forward to speak about feedback next week. Thank you for joining, Madalina. Take
You're
care.
welcome. Bye,
Bye bye.
everybody.
Bye bye.